Welcome to Piers Morgan. I'm Piers Morgan, and if you want the usual diplomatic waffle and carefully worded statements that tell you nothing, you've come to the wrong place. We're 12 days into this war now, and while the politicians are busy with their carefully crafted press releases, people are dying. Real people, with names, with families, with lives that mattered. Today, we've got explosive new developments. Iran is threatening to target American and Israeli banks after a deadly strike on a bank in Tehran. France is scrambling to form an international coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz because apparently the global economy can't wait for this war to end. Pakistan has sent warships into the same waters, and Hezbollah claims it's making Israeli forces unable to infiltrate into Lebanon. But here's what really gets me. The UN is warning about environmental catastrophe, about water supplies being poisoned, about hundreds of thousands displaced. And what are our leaders doing? Posturing, threatening, escalating. Let's get into it. And let's be honest about what's really happening out there. Let's start with something that should concern every single person watching this program. Iran is now threatening to target American and Israeli banks across the region. This comes after what Iranian state media describes as a US-Israeli airstrike on a bank in northern Tehran. Now, here's the detail that makes my blood boil. Several bank employees were reportedly killed while working an extra shift to prepare February's month-end salaries. These weren't soldiers, these weren't commanders, these were ordinary people doing ordinary jobs, trying to earn a living, and they're dead because someone decided their workplace was a military target. Iran's military has responded by announcing they now have the right to target economic centers and banks belonging to the US and Israel across the entire region. Let me read you their exact statement, because it matters. The Americans should await our painful retaliatory action. And here's the truly chilling part. They've actually issued a warning to civilians in countries hosting US and Israeli banks, telling people to stay at least 1 kilometer away from these facilities. That's not a threat against governments. That's a threat against ordinary people going about their daily lives. Meanwhile, in the waters of the Gulf, 3 commercial ships have come under fire. Let me tell you about them, because they're not warships, they're commercial vessels carrying goods crewed by civilians from around the world. The Thailand-flagged bulk carrier Mayuree Naree was damaged north of Oman. A Japan-flagged container ship sustained damage off Ras Al Khaimah, and another bulk carrier was hit near Dubai. Now, I've spent enough time around the world to know what happens when commercial shipping becomes a target. Insurance costs skyrocket, shipping companies reroute or stop sailing altogether, supply chains seize up, and eventually the prices of everything go up. That's not just a Middle East problem, that's a global problem that hits every family watching this program in their grocery bills, their petrol costs, their heating bill. The Strait of Hormuz handles about 1/5 of the world's oil. 1/5. And right now, traffic is effectively ground to a halt. This isn't just a war anymore. It's an economic weapon aimed at the entire world. So what's the international community doing about this? Well, France is finally stepping up, and I have to give them credit for trying. Defense Minister Catherine Vautrin confirmed today that Paris is holding diplomatic talks to build an international coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. They're consulting with partners including Japan and India. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noel Barrot put it bluntly, the global economy should not be held hostage by a war between the US and Israel on one side and Iran on the other. Now, I agree with the sentiment, but here's the problem. France wants to wait until the very high-intensity hostilities cease before deploying a mission. Let me translate that for you. They want to wait until it's safe, which is understandable. But while they're waiting, the world's oil supply is sitting in tankers that can't move, and the global economy is taking a beating. They're modelling this on the European operation in the Red Sea that's been escorting ships through Houthi-threatened waters. But the Strait of Hormuz is different. It's narrower, only 34 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, and is right in the middle of the fighting. Now here's something I find genuinely impressive. While the Europeans are still talking, Pakistan has already acted. On March 9th, Pakistan's Navy launched Operation Sea Guardian. They've deployed warships, Chinese-built 54 AP frigates, the PNS Tugrul and PNS Shahjahan, to escort Pakistani merchant vessels through the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman. Why? Because Pakistan imports over 80% of its oil through this waterway. When international shipping suspended operations and insurance costs went through the roof, Pakistani tankers were stranded. Energy supplies at home were threatened, so instead of waiting for someone else to fix the problem, they fixed it themselves. This is what national interest looks like in action. Pakistan isn't taking sides in this war, not really. They're protecting their own people, their own economy, their own energy security, and they're using modern warships with advanced radar and air defense systems to do it. President Trump has suggested the US Navy could accompany tankers through the strait, but let's be realistic. The Soufan Center warns that any escort mission would likely face persistent threats from Iranian missiles and drones. And Iran has between 2,000 to 6,000 naval mines stockpiled. This is not a simple operation. Now let's turn to Lebanon, because this front is heating up in ways that should worry everyone. Hezbollah claims it's making Israeli forces unable to infiltrate into Lebanese territory. According to their statements, fighters have attacked Israeli troops near the southern border towns of Kiam and Odessa. They've also launched rockets at Israel, including targeting a missile defense site south of Haifa. Israel, predictably, is striking back hard. Overnight, Israeli warplanes launched new attacks on Beirut's southern suburbs, a Hezbollah stronghold. The Israeli military said it was targeting Hezbollah infrastructure and command centers. And here's the human cost that gets lost in these military statements. In the southern town of Qana, 5 people killed. In Tyre district, an initial strike wounded 2 people, then a follow-up attack killed them, along with a rescuer who came to help. This is what's called a double-tap strike, hitting the same target twice to kill first responders. And if you know anything about the laws of war, you know this is deeply problematic. The casualty numbers are staggering. Over 759,000 people registered as displaced in Lebanon, over 122,600 inches shelters, and those are just the ones who could register. 2 other stories today demand your attention. First, Iran has accused Israel of killing 4 of its diplomats in a weekend strike on a seafront Beirut hotel. They're calling it a terrorist attack. The Israeli military, for its part, says it conducted a precise strike targeting key commanders in the IRGC's Quds force. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Diplomats have protected status under international law. If diplomats were deliberately targeted, that's a serious escalation. If they were in a building used for military purposes, the legal analysis gets murkier. But killing diplomats is not something that happens without consequences. Second, the Pentagon has announced that about 140 US service members have been wounded in attacks during this war. 140, in addition to 7 confirmed deaths. These are young men and women far from home, now facing life-changing injuries. Their families are getting phone calls they never wanted to receive. And for what? What's the end game here? Because from where I'm sitting, I don't see anyone with a clear answer to that question. Let me leave you with this. The UN is now warning about environmental catastrophe. Strikes on oil refineries could poison water supplies. 5 hospitals in Lebanon have ceased operations. Over 500,000 people displaced. Iranian seafarers missing at sea. A Filipino crewman lost after a tugboat sank near the Strait of Hormuz. The Philippine government has declared the entire Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, and Gulf of Oman as warlike operations areas. This is the reality of war, not the press conferences, not the carefully worded statements, not the political posturing. It's dead bank employees working extra shifts, it's wounded soldiers, it's displaced families, it's crewmen lost at sea. And what are we doing about it? France is talking. Pakistan is acting alone. The US and Israel are fighting. Iran is threatening. And the rest of the world is watching, hoping it doesn't get worse. I'm Piers Morgan. This has been Piers Morgan. We'll be back tomorrow with more truth, more facts, and no nonsense. Until then, keep your eyes open and your questions coming.